Yo, what's up? What's going on? What's good, everybody? That's right. Boston Soul shaking in here on January 16th, 2023 for the Boston Source radio show. I am your host, James Bell, the leader of the Boston Source. And, we want to, kind of like get into a few things here that have been going down in the sport of boxing. So, we want to kind of jump on a few things here. Know that we got like a number of topics to go over. There was a fight card in Verona, New York that was, put up by a top ranked boxing that had, a co-feature bout and a main event there that was on ESPN. There was also a number of fights that were on ESPN Plus that we're going to be going over, and we'll also have some news and notes in reference to the sport of boxing. As we had a few things happening, when it comes to Mr. Timothy Bradley and with Oscar De La Hoya that wants to put up an ultimatum. And I had just received some news in reference to possibly why Oscar De La Hoya was saying the things that he was saying. But we will kind of go into that in detail here in a little bit. But we want to get right into the event that was at the Turning Stone Resort Casino in Verona, New York. And, that is one particular venue that I had been to one time. That was during the International Boxing Hall of Fame weekend last year in Verona, New York. Man, I'm telling you, it's a good little drive from where I'm at, and from a direct way from where I'm at to Verona. That is a drive that you really don't want to kind of like go through at night. I'm gonna just say that off rip. You don't want to go through that particular ride at night. It is not a good look at all. But there has been, a few things that, a number of events that have taken place there at that particular casino or hotel area, outside of what they do for the International Boxing Hall of Fame weekend. But, we kind of want to take on, or at least cover, what happened there. I know that there are a number of people that did catch the main event there with Efe Ajagba and Stephen Shaw, and that they were kind of, disappointed in that particular event. Stephen Shaw came in as a replacement opponent for Oscar Rivas. Oscar Rivas has been a heavyweight contender. He is still, as if I'm not mistaken, still the WBC Bridgeweight champion. But I haven't necessarily seen much going on with that Bridgeweight division that the WBC has. But yeah, like I said, Efe Ajagba, we know that he had that lone loss to Frank Sanchez Foray in 2021. And he had like one win after that. It was, get back here in the ring, second fight. I think this is while under top rank or whatever, going up against Stephen Shaw. Stephen Shaw came in with an undefeated record of 18-0. And, we tried to see about, kind of like saying, hey, I mean, I had these wins over like Rydell Burker, Joey DeRisco, the people know about in boxing circles, and a few other fighters. And also Jonnie Rice, who we, have talked with on multiple occasions, and we're going to talk about Jonnie Rice later on. But here in this particular instance, Stephen Shaw had this bout here against Efe Ajagba, and wanted to kind of like get in there and say, hey, I'm going to go in and I'm going to see if I can take advantage of this opportunity, that hey, I'm here in place of Oscar Rivas, and who knows if I might get this opportunity once again, whether it's on the top ranked card or some other card to, be on a major platform. This was on ESPN, main event, ESPN, prime time. People, were coming off of watching that thriller event in Jacksonville, where the Jacksonville Jaguars came back to beat the Los Angeles Chargers. So that's why you had a long time that people were waiting for that ESPN telecast to take place. So when these fights finally went down, this is where a lot of the eyes would be on. So Stephen Shaw coming in there, like I said, undefeated against Efe Ajagba. Ajagba is one of those guys that kind of like is seen has the dimensions of a guy that could potentially do some damage in the heavyweight division. 6'6". There came in weighing in at around 235 pounds at the weigh-in. Has an 85-inch reach, one of the longest reaches there in the heavyweight division. But he wanted to kind of like see if he could make a statement here, being the main event. And well, kind of like looked like, hey, he was, going through, a few things as far as like trying to work the jab and things like that. But, it was like 10 rounds where, a number of people kind of like expected a lot from Efe Ajagba. Even with it being Stephen Shaw, a replacement opponent, you want to go ahead and like make a statement, being a main event of a top ranked card. And here, he had that opportunity to do that. And, well, over the course of 10 rounds, a lot of people just felt like this was just not really much coming out of it. And you had 6 rounds to 4 decision victory on all 3 scorecards for Efe Ajagba, in this. And, for Ajagba to hand Stephen Shaw's first professional loss, it was something because he looked like he had the lead. Stephen Shaw did, through 6 rounds. But then in those last 4, he ended up, losing those. So, and the thing about it was like, hey, he was up 58-56 in all 3 scorecards. So it looked like a clean sweep for those last 4 rounds for Efe Ajagba. So he kind of like, Stephen Shaw had the fight in his hands and looked like he just squandered it away, man. Like, you're undefeated. You got a chance to, beat somebody at Efe Ajagba that could, be trying to get himself back into contender status there in the heavyweight division. And hey, you had the lead. You were looking like you had the skills to, go over there and steal the win from Efe Ajagba. But in those last 4 rounds, you really couldn't do it. And number of notable people that were watching this fight, like kind of like said that, hey man, this was like a real struggle to get through. And I know that there's a few people that work with Efe Ajagba. I talked with one in Jonnie Rice, earlier in the week before his fight that he had here against Guido Vianello. I know that there's a co trainer there, or chief second, Flick. I know him from the Washington D.C. area. He's worked with Jared Hurd, among other fighters here in the DMV area, along with Kay Karoma, the head trainer for Efe Ajagba. But from what I've been seeing or reading, number of people just don't really see Efe Ajagba really like kind of like progressing as a fighter. He may be like working on trying to be more consistent with his jab. Like I said, he has an 85-inch reach, in that he could be more consistent, more emphatic with the jab, and then try to work from that. And I think that is something that he has to develop here later on in 2023. After getting this win over Stephen Shaw, like I don't know where he would be kind of like positioned here at this point in the heavyweight division. I know that he kind of like said that his corner was telling him to let his hands go and keep throwing punches in the tail end of the fight, and he was pretty much doing that. Landing 62 punches there after the 6th round in comparison to 37 there for Stephen Shaw. But yeah, outside of that, like there was, I don't think people like seen like either fighter be in some real trouble. out there after, during the fight, and that, maybe you can score a knockdown. I think that a number of fight fans, when they see fighters in the heavyweight division there, expecting big guys, throwing big punches and landing some big shots. Of course, we had like a frequent guest on the show that has that terminology. Well, what is that thing? Two big men bumping me. I'm not gonna say the other terminology that he said. Like, I'm not doing that. Okay, that's way too out there for me to say on this podcast. That's for something for them to say. But when you have these big men in the ring, you expect to see some big punches being thrown, some big punches being landed, and all that. You know what I'm saying? And that you want to see if these fighters, right, are going to be scoring some big knockdowns. But in this particular case, in this main event, there with Efe Ajagba and Stephen Shaw, you didn't necessarily see that. Now, one thing I kind of like seen after the fight is that some people are kind of like considering Efe Ajagba being a potential opponent for the WBO interim champion Joe Joyce, the Juggernaut. And I'm like, well, if you're gonna have the undisputed heavyweight championship fight between Alexander Usyk and Tyson Fury, then Joe Joyce would be looking for an opponent. Efe Ajagba, I mean, from a dimension standpoint, he might look all good. Has the same height, around the same dimensions as a Joe Joyce, but Joe Joyce just has the intangibles. Like I said, he's a juggernaut. He's a very tough opponent for anybody. And I think that he would be one of the guys that I feel like has the potential to beat any heavyweight that's out there right now, including Alexander Usyk. Yeah, I know that he lost to Usyk in the World Boxing Series or World Series of Boxing or whatever. But I feel like he has the intangibles to defeat someone like Alexander Usyk at this point of his career. And yes, he probably could beat someone like Tyson Fury too. But for Efe Ajagba, if he potentially faces Joe Joyce, he's going to have to work on a lot in order for him to, I say, have a big shot there to defeat Joe Joyce. And if it's up to me, man, I might have to talk to K Karoma or Flick around this area and say, hey, if that's going to be a potential matchup, then we got to get him right back in the gym, get him working. That's the thing that we got to do, because the thing is, you got to have to stay sharp against someone that has those type of dimensions, that has defeated all types of fighters there so far in his professional career in Joe Joyce. So, I mean, hey, if Ajagba has a fight like that coming up next, then yeah, we got to see if he's going to be able to work on a little bit more before they put him in that particular position. But outside of that, maybe there could be some other fighters out there for Efe Ajagba to fight. Jared Anderson is not going to be one of them. They have worked together on multiple occasions in camps. On multiple occasions, they've been on the cards together in the past too. So you know what I'm saying? Not really looking for that to come to fruition. So there's that. One time for those that are joining in here live on YouTube live right now. And like I said, it will be available in podcast form through Anchor.fm that has it distributed through Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and other multiple platforms. So you'll be able to listen to this particular podcast on demand anytime you want. Right? All right, cool. So that was the main event. Like I said, you really didn't have that much coming out of that one. You know what I'm saying? So there was that. Most of the talk, I think, from the fight card there on ESPN came from the co-feature bout. You had Guido Vianello going up against Jonnie Rice. And, in that one, you like you said, you had another instance where you had a replacement opponent. Jonnie Rice came in as a replacement opponent to fight Guido Vianello. Vianello is undefeated, 10 wins, 0 losses with 1 draw. Jonnie Rice, of course, uh, had those 2 wins over Michael Polite Coffee some time back there. And, the last bout that he had was at the beginning of 2022 in that rematch against Mike Coffey, where he scored a unanimous decision win. And at that particular point, he was like at the around the heaviest that he was in his professional career, pretty much like near that, going up against Mike Polite Coffey, but he was still able to score a clear unanimous decision win over Mike Coffey in that bout. And then he gets called in 1 year later against Guido Vianello. And, we did have that conversation with Jonnie Rice when he was in Vegas before he headed out to Verona, New York for this bout. And he had this thing here, and, it looked like, it wasn't kind of like looking all too hot there, for Jonnie Rice. A number of the rounds, he, wasn't doing that much on offense. He was, moving his head around a lot and things like that. There were some punches that, Guido Vianello was, not landing. But still, it was still the activity from Guido Vianello that had him had the lead in, most of these, most of the rounds there, through the 5 rounds or whatnot. But then Jonnie Rice, was able to land a big right hand on Guido Vianello that opened up the cut. And that cut was just, really bad there until the end of the 6th round. And that's when the whole craziness started, or as I say, the bacchanal started, when they were pretty much saying, hey, we're going to halt this bout. The cut is too much, for Guido Vianello to continue, and we're going to go to the scorecards. And Jonnie Rice was like, what? Going to the scorecards? What you talking about, man? I hit that MF with a right hand. That's a TKO. Y'all need to go. Y'all need to go on some replay for that. And you had Carl Moretti, up there on the ring, looking at what's going down. You had the referee, in there. Like I said, Benji Estevez Jr. was a referee saying, "Hey, this is going to go to the scorecards." And I'm like, "Whoa, nah, don't do that." It's like I said, if it went to the scorecards, it would have been a unanimous decision win for Guido Vianello. But they, did the right thing. It went to the replay. They saw that it was a clear punch from Jonnie Rice on there that caused that cut. And, since it went through that and then he couldn't continue, that Jonnie Rice got the victory over Guido Vianello and handed Guido his first professional loss. So shout out to Jonnie Rice. Jonnie Rice, said that, hey, he was like kind of like working on that in the gym and stuff like that. He has, recently been on the conversation on, another outlet. Shout out to Supreme Beast Boxing. They, were chapping it up with Jonnie Rice here earlier today. And, he said like, he was in the gym with the likes of, Efe Ajagba, there with like Jared Anderson. He was out there with Joe Joyce. He like mentioned that to me as well, last week. They was working with those guys. But, he said like, even while he was working in the gym, he didn't really have like that much energy at first because he was just so busy doing other things, doing jobs and stuff like that since he had been inactive for a good amount of time. So he's like, yo, I gotta, find a way to get bread. So I gotta, get these odd jobs here and there and do this, at the same time, still be out there in the gym working, because you never know when you get that call. And that was what happened here. He got that call, and he took the opportunity, and when he had that shot, he went ahead and took it and just made the most of it. And for him, that's another win for him. And he's kind of like on the little free agent type thing or whatnot right now. Not sure what's going to be next for him. He said like hopefully that he'll be back in it around April or May. For me, I kind of like feel like hopefully this is not going to be another situation like when he defeated Mike Coffey the first time, where they're like, okay, he got that win over Mike Coffey, he stopped Mike Coffey, but did he really stop Mike Coffey? So they had him have a rematch with Mike Coffey, and so he just went ahead and just beat him again. Now you have this here where he defeats another undefeated fighter, Guido Vianello, and now is Brad Goodman or Carl Meridian Top Rank going to say, hey, what are we going to do here? Are we going to just say, hey, maybe we could put Jonnie Rice in with somebody else, or are we going to just say, hey, let's see if he has something there against Guido Vianello, and have him in a rematch. So we'll see how that goes. Shout out to Undercard Boxing on the live chat. We have the ShoBox, the new generation, coming up on January 20th in Pennsylvania. I know that there's going to be a number of fighters from Pennsylvania that will be on that card, including Chief Overton, or as some people call him there in the Pennsylvania area, Pretty Boy Calvo. He'll be on there against Artem Brusov there in that card. I think that they're going to have also Sean Hemphill against David Stevens in that one as well. So there'll probably be about 3 or 4 fights that'll be on that card. That'll be something for people to watch there on Showtime. But back on the thing there with Jonnie Rice, like I said, Jonnie Rice, he's my guy. He's been one of the fighters that has not had that many issues as far as like getting at us for like interviews or talking and chopping it up. So if y'all ain't following Jonnie Rice, Forever Jonnie Rice on Instagram, y'all can go ahead and follow him on that. He's just trying to do his thing, and if y'all just keep asking for him to like say, hey, you need to see Jonnie Rice in the ring, that maybe he could be put in position to have another fight here real soon. And try to get in there with another fighter there in the heavyweight division. But like I said before, who knows? He might have another fight here against Guido Vianello as a rematch, just like the thing there with Mike Polite Coffee. They might just do that. Then we'll see. I know that they might have something in the instance of where other analysts like Teddy Atlas might talk about that particular fight here later on down the line. So I guess we'll hear from Teddy Atlas on that in that instance. But that was my thing. Like I said, I was just mainly focused on what Jonnie Rice was doing in that fight card on ESPN. You also had I think this was right before the thing there with the ESPN main telecast. You had the thing on ESPN Plus where you had Adam Blue Nose Lopez against Abraham Nova. Abraham Nova was just coming off of his stoppage loss to Robert C. Ramirez in June of last year, going up against Blue Nose and Adam Lopez. Lopez has been in, a good number of fights that have been, what I would say, like kind of like in some pretty notable cards here and there. I've seen him against Adam Ochoa at Mandalay Bay in that Crawford Porter undercard. He's fought Isaac Dogbe. He's fought Oscar Valdez. Man, there's a number of fighters that he's been in there with. Adam Ochoa, like I said, had that rematch with him. He's been in there with Stephen Fulton. Like, he's been in there with a number of these guys, man, a number of them. And so like that's why like a number of people call like have heard about Adam Lopez because he's been in there with a good number of good fighters, over the course of his professional career. But here going up against Abraham Nova, and Nova looked like he was doing good, at that, in this particular fight. And that I think the power of Abraham Nova was just a major factor in him getting that win over Adam Lopez. Nova was able to score 2 knockdowns over the course of this fight, one in round 5 and then another one in round 6. And I think that kind of made, Adam Lopez a little bit tentative there in this particular bout. I think that he had some good moments, but there was a number of times when Nova just had some answers that was just way too much there for Blue Nose. So I felt like the thing about it was, Abraham Nova just getting himself his bearings back here in this bout against Adam Lopez. I think that would kind of like help him out here, whether it's going to be in that featherweight, super featherweight range. You know what I'm saying? Because in this last bout he was there at featherweight against Robeisy Ramirez, but he's had like a number of fights that have been around that super featherweight or the lightweight division. So Abraham Nova getting himself back into a win column with a unanimous decision win. 2 scores of 98-90, 1 score of 97-91. And that was, a big win there for Abraham Nova. I know that some people kind of like take a kin to that little mascot that he has while he comes up to the ring. Hey man, I don't know about y'all, but man, I don't know. I don't know. Like if I was like somebody that could potentially do that, I don't know if I could do that, man. I don't know if I could be out there like a mascot. I'm telling you, man, them outfits be hot, man. I'm telling you, they be hot. So it's like you got to be in there that whole time. Nah, buddy, I don't know if I can see something like myself being in some like a mascot outfit for something like that. So shout out to those people that be in those outfits because them joints be hot. No matter where you at, they'll be hot. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, hey, I get it. I get it. You can sell the fight, but I'm telling you, you're gonna have to pay me a good little percentage if you go have me out there in some of them uniforms, some of them costumes, man. That I'm sorry, y'all gonna have to come up with some type of payment plan for me if I was gonna do that. But shout out to the mascot there. Shout out to the person that's doing that. That kind of like you said, it does sell the fight, does sell the fighter, and it gives them a little bit of added interest in. Like I said, with Abraham Nova getting this unanimous decision win, I'll be interested to see what happens here next. I know that he, like I said, he went down to the featherweight division, fighting Robeisy Ramirez, but he's had the majority of his career above 126 pounds. So, maybe he could, still float around as a contender there in the super featherweight division. I don't know what to make of the super featherweight division at this point since Shakur Stevenson is moving up to lightweight. So we'll have to see. You know what I mean? So you had that. You also had Brian Norman Jr., undefeated, went to 23-0, had a unanimous decision victory over Rodrigo Corey. Haven Brady Jr. Has been a frequent guest here with the Boxing Source. He had a unanimous decision win over Ruben Severa. He's been doing some good work, over in Philadelphia out there, with Coach Boza Ennis and the camp out there. So shout out to Haven Brady Jr. Also had Bruce Carrington get a unanimous decision win. He was supposed to be on that card for that Teofimo Lopez Sandor Martin card, but that fight ended up getting scrapped. So good to see him be able to get back in the ring for that. So you also had him getting a win there in that top ranked card. So that kind of like covered mostly everything that went down there at Verona, New York. And like I said, like yo, that place there, man. I don't know. Like I could have been up there, but I'm like, man, that drive, ugh, yo, that's a drive, man. I'm telling you, that's like right. I'm like, that's like right in the middle of New York, and there's like nothing out there. Okay, like it's a little bit. You have to go a little bit from Syracuse to get to this point where Verona, New York is, but outside of that, man, there's like absolutely nothing out there. It's like barely any lights. There's barely any lights on the interstate, going right by where the Turning Stone Resort is. Like, I'm telling you, it is a struggle to get out there for sure. But I don't know, maybe I'll be back out there for the International Boxing Hall of Fame weekend in June, but we'll see. But if I do, I'm telling you, it takes some work to get out there. I'll just say that. But speaking of the thing there for International Boxing Hall of Fame weekend, one of the other topics that I was going to drop is on Mr. Timothy Bradley, who is a 2023 inductee in the International Boxing Hall of Fame. So he will get inducted as one of the fighters there in June of 2023. But he has been in the news for a couple of comments that he has made. In particular, there's an interview with him. I think it is, with what is it, Fight Hub or whatnot. Hopefully, I got that right. Because there's Fight Hub and there's Fight Hype, and that there have been people that have kind of like confused me with the Boxing Voice, and I don't want to confuse those two because I know who's ahead of both of those media outlets. So hopefully I got that right. Okay. And Timothy Bradley's comments there in that particular interview were, particularly for Gervonta Tank Davis, and that he said that one, he hopes that Tank Davis loses. I'm like, okay, that could be one thing. Okay, so then it looks like just for those that are listening on the recording, undercard boxing, shout out to undercard boxing. He says that it was Fight Hub that had an interview with Timothy Bradley. But Bradley was having his comments about Gervonta Tank Davis in reference to this fight with Ryan Garcia, in that maybe it potentially may or may not happen, and that they're talking about what Oscar De La Hoya said, which I will talk about here in a bit. But he kind of like said, hey, he would like to see Tank Davis lose, and that he hasn't really like challenged himself, or when is he gonna have those big fights or whatever it is or whatnot. And I'm like, well, number one, if you follow what has been going on, like he has now, like I said, the dog's out the cage. So he wants all of those guys. He wants the Shakur Stevensons. He wants the Vasyl Lomachenkos. He wants the Devin Haney's. He wants, all of those challenges there, whether it's around that 135 to 140 pound range at this particular point. He wants that Ryan Garcia fight. So that's number one. But number two, to kind of like say, that Timothy Bradley says that Gervonta is a POS for, what, the whole thing that went down before his fight versus Hector Garcia. It's like, number one, you don't really know. You ain't really talking about, what really happened. And you wanted to add in hints about, or the little tidbits about what actually happened, and then still wanted to put the blame on Gervonta Davis instead of just letting it all play out and having him clear himself out with that. So number one, that kind of like looked like to me like you wanted Tank Davis to be in trouble in that particular capacity, to where hey, number one, you wouldn't have had that fight against Hector Luis Garcia. And then number two, that he wouldn't have had a fight with Ryan Garcia. So that, like I said, he was kind of like, that kind of like sounded like hating to me. But for some people, do they feel like surprised about that with Timothy Bradley? With a lot of the comments that he's made in reference to a Mr. Errol Spence Jr., that he continuously claims that Errol Spence Jr. Is reluctant to fight Terrence Crawford. When it's basically been common knowledge that when they were trying to make the fight on two separate occasions, it could have been happening in 2022, and a certain fighter held out in reference to that. And so that's that. And we kind of like went through the details of what was offered to Terrence Crawford on those multiple occasions before we even got to where it was supposed to take place in November. So we've gone through a lot of that stuff already. You don't have to go through that again. So there's that. I see what ESPN is talking about, and yes, I'm going to just say straight up, hey, I'm an independent organization, and yes, I have been to a number of top ranked cards. I've covered a number of top ranked cards. I know the people that handle the PR for it. But when it comes to the commentators that are on ESPN that work through boxing, that's a whole different story, and I don't rock with that. You can have somebody like Tim Bradley. You can have somebody like who is it? Mike Coppinger, and a number of people within boxing know about Mike Coppinger, and this is the same Mike Coppinger that Mr. Bob Arum, got on for the whole thing with Devin Haney, where he said, "Shut the fuck up, you little prick. Yeah, you prick. Get him out of here." But, Mike Coppinger's still able to do what he do, and he's still under the payroll of ESPN. So, that is what it is. Back to Timothy Bradley. Like you said, he had those comments about, Mr. Gervonta Davis. And, like I said, he kind of like came off as a hater with that. And I don't like that, And the other thing was, like I said, with Errol Spence Jr. talking about, when are you gonna fight Terrence Crawford? You need to stop doing this with Terrence Crawford. I'm like, first of all, you're a fighter. You don't understand. I'm like, you should, at the very least, you should understand the business. That's number one. Number two, if you're a fan of the sport, you want to see if you could have the best fights possible. And you, as a fighter, I'm gonna be straight up. Tim Bradley, as a fighter, I'll just say it. He did what needed to be done in order to get those fights that he wanted to get to, whether it was at 140 pounds or 147 pounds. He was able to do that to a certain extent. But for some reason, for another fighter that used to be on the top rank, that had a lot to say about top rank, he's not held to that same standard. Hey, it is what it is with that, So there's that. On the live chat, Undercard Boxing asked a question: why did Timothy Bradley, never fought Terrence Allen Crawford? Good question. Timothy Bradley Jr., had been a professional up until that 2016 point. And, he had, what did he have? He had the fights against Manny Pacquiao. He had the Probodnikov fight in 2013. And, Marquez fight. He lost Pacquiao in 2014. I don't know. Maybe, he could have fought in 2015 or something like that. It wasn't even like the thing. That was it. It was like no one really, to be honest, no one really kind of, suggested that particular fight. You out there, especially when Terrence Crawford was still campaigning in the super lightweight division in 2016. Like he had only became the undisputed champion at 140 in 2017. So by that time, Timothy Bradley was already retired. You know what I'm saying? So they had, they hadn't really crossed paths in reference to that. But at that particular point, yeah, he was only fighting those guys, the Marquez's, the Manny Pacquiao's, and stuff like that, to where he was kind of like building himself as a fighter that was having those high-profile cash fights and not really, fighting for world titles up to that particular point. Outside of like having that WBO belt that he won from Manny Pacquiao back in 2012, but after he lost it to Manny Pacquiao 2 years later, he never fought for it again until that Brandon Rios fight. So, and he didn't even hold it for that long afterwards. So there's that. But I mean that's Timothy Bradley right there for you. So like I said, his comments about Errol Spence Jr. have been called into question on multiple occasions, and then this thing here with the outburst of Gervonta Davis, that was uncalled for. Like I don't understand why you would have something like that happen, and say that about Tank Davis like that, especially when you here's my thing, right? You've had multiple other fighters in the past that have done stuff that is much worse, or anything like that, and you don't say nothing about that. And I know one particular fighter that is a former world champion, former unified world champion, that still is fighting, that doesn't, have his past transgressions called into question, So there's that. And yes, he has fought under top rank or a top rank card himself. So that's one thing to kind of like bring up in reference to Timothy Bradley. But, I think that Tim has to hold off on that, just to be honest, right? But the other thing was, like I said, with Tank Davis, you have another guy that has made some outlandish comments, and that is Mr. Oscar De La Hoya, Golden Boy Promotions. Now, this is the same Oscar De La Hoya that is now, oh yeah, Max Kellerman too. Of course, Max Kellerman. Yeah, undercard boxing. Shout out to undercard boxing. There with this one. Bring up Max Kellerman. Like I said, he has that Max on boxing where he brings up, that as they say, the prick, on there. So, and they push out those stories. And when you have an outlet like ESPN that has the reach that they have, so whatever stories they put out, whether it's factual or not, whether it's has much validity or not, it could be posed as having a lot of validity because of the outreach or the amount of people that they are able to reach with those stories that they put up. So, regardless of whether the stories are valid or not, as long as they put it out there, a lot of people are going to take it for what it is. You know what I'm saying? So, that's something to kind of like go up. But, back with this thing here with Mr. Oscar De La Hoya, he supposedly put up an ultimatum as far as like a contract for him to receive in reference to the bout between Gervonta, Tank Davis, and Ryan Garcia. Now that first of all, that's kind of like ridiculous, given that we haven't even been through a full week yet since Gervonta Davis defeated Hector Luis Garcia. So there's that. So you don't necessarily have those things happen, or everything or all the details kind of like ironed out a week after a fight takes place. Number one, a venue hasn't been secured yet. Venue hasn't been secured yet. You might have the splits or the financial splits kind of like worked out to a certain extent. But outside of that, maybe you could do a few things here and there. Now, I've heard reports, and this has just been kind of like released to me about what is it, about an hour ago. There have been reports in reference to the pay-per-view numbers for Gervonta Tank Davis versus Hector Luis Garcia. That it was around 58,000 or so pay-per-view buys from direct carrier. So that's like ordering through a cable company or whatnot. So for me, some people kind of will say, "Oh, that's a failure." But number one, I'm gonna explain a few things with that. 58,000 pay per view buys with the 74.99 per charge. That's 4 million. That's 4 million. $4.3 million, right? So you got to take that $4.3 million and compare it to what those guys, Gervonta Tank Davis and Hector Luis Garcia, were paid guarantees. So that's the thing. If you had around the cap of 58,000, that's just saying, like, we could just say that it was just 58,000 pay-per-view buys, not even counting what was on the app, Showtime app, or Paramount Plus or anything like that. Let's just do that. And we just multiply that by the $75, $74.99. That's still $4.34 million pay-per-view revenue. Okay. Now, if they had a guarantee of just $1.5 million total for the purse, and you got a $4.3 million, pay-per-view revenue, they still got back-end money for that. And not only that, you still had that story about the gate being $5 million. You know what I'm saying? So there's that. Big ups to D1 on the live chats, checking in. Shout out to you, D1. Like I said, you're gonna have about $4.3 million pay-per-view revenue. You're gonna have $5 million there at the gate. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, I think that was around shout out to undercard boxing once again on the live chat. He says through the reports it was like Tank got 1.5 million guaranteed and Hector got 500K guaranteed there, and that you still have to work with the pay-per-view back-end revenues from that. So they got the guarantee. As long as they were able to meet that guarantee of $2 million, if that was the report for $2 million total for the purse, anything after that is a profit. So I'm trying to jump in front of this here. If you have that report there of 58,000 pay-per-view buys, people are going to say, "Oh man, that was a dud, that was a failure, that was this, that was that." They don't know about things when it talks about pay-per-view revenue, what a break-even point is. Okay. So if they made that break-even point and surpassed that, then yeah, they made money off that. Okay. So they were able to do what they needed to do in order to, get the money and also get pay-per-view back-end money. Then, like I said, you also have the gate receipts of around $5 million at the Capital One Arena for all of those people that bought those tickets. So I know that Oscar De La Hoya looks like he's trying to get a little bit more money for Ryan Garcia in this case, but hey, Ryan Garcia is not a pay-per-view draw. He hasn't had a pay-per-view fight. He hasn't really had a fight where a gate has been that much north of $1 million. You're comparing that to someone that's had multiple $4.5 million gates. So I know that you're trying to get more money off of this, but good luck. This is the same Oscar De La Hoya that was dealing with Canelo Alvarez that had to go to the 11th hour in order to sign the rematch with Gennady Golovkin. So it's like he wants to try to do the same thing that Gennady Golovkin did to Canelo Alvarez when Canelo was on the Golden Boy. That's not a good look. I'm sorry, that's not a good look. But like I said, when you have Gervonta Tank Davis, even with just that pay-per-view, you could take that out of the way. Okay, that's just 58K. But the other ones that he's did have been north of 100K pay-per-view buys. that have had pay-per-view revenues of over $10 million. So that whole thing about, oh, hey, you only made this much from this particular pay-per-view. What about the other pay-per-view events that he's done? You got to also take that into account. So I think that a lot of people will try to run with that whole thing with the 58K or whatever it is and just go by the number of 58K when they don't talk about the pay-per-view revenue, how much it is, and then also the amount of pay-per-view buys that have happened in Tank Davis's previous fights. So there's that. And so you got to, take that what it is. And yeah, as one person has said, there's still more pay-per-view buys than another notable fighter in the welterweight division. So I'll just leave it at that. With that being said, that kind of like is mostly what I wanted to talk about in this particular episode of the Boxing Source Radio Show. You're pretty much like keeping it under an hour. I know that there are some people that want to or are paying attention to a game in the National Football League that is being featured right now. So pretty much gonna go on that. We'll see if we can have more news and notes over the course of the week. Considering doing a midweek report sometime on Wednesday. So we'll see about that. But I think there's probably one other thing that we could jump into here real quick. And that is that news with Mr. Ivan Redkach. Him saying that he will be out of the event against Adrien Broner. That fight that is, planned to be on February 25th. I forgot what the venue is in Atlanta, but I know that it is home of the WNBA team and the development league team there in Atlanta. And, for me, just being real, just being straight up, given, what the guarantees are kind of like being said in reference to Adrien Broner, it's not really a good look. If you want to give a fighter like Adrien Broner a high guarantee, you're going to have him in a venue that, is either a large venue or something where you say, hey, we can put it in this venue, but we got to have the tickets at this price. Because you're not going to have people that interested in a fight. Like if it was a Redkach, Broner versus Redkach, I don't know if you would have had that much interest in it. So, we'll see how that goes. It's supposed to be February 25th. We'll get more details on that as it goes. But, like I said, and what I just, want to be as straight up as possible with how things go in this. And a lot of times, people don't take into account the business of boxing and how, these events are put together, how these events are made, and how much money either can be made or, is made in these events. So always got to take into that account. And there's that. So we'll see how that develops here in the next few weeks or so, leading into that which is scheduled for February 25th. With that being said, that is this particular episode of the Boxing Source Radio Show. You could follow the YouTube channel. We had, multiple interviews that happened over the course of the week, including with Mr. Samson Lukowicz and also with Mr. Dimitri Salita. So y'all be sure to check that out. We'll see if we can have more interviews here over the course of the week as well. And like I said, probably have a midweek report plan also. So you'll be sure to check that out. But thank everyone that joined in on the live conversation. Like I said, this will be available on demand through whatever podcast application you use to listen to podcasts. And like I say at the end of every show, the point of boxing is a hit and not a hit, not a send and trade. On that note, folks, I'm out. Have a good evening, everybody.